My name is Nick Bilogorsky. I'm a managing partner at Dnipro VC and the founder and chairman of Nova Ukraine, the largest Ukrainian American charity. I was born in Kharkiv, Ukraine. I grew up in Canada and live in Silicon Valley. I started playing with computers and trying to break computers at an early age. Infected my mom's laptop with a computer virus, and that determined my career. I run security teams at Facebook and Google and Juniper Networks. I'm thrilled to be here today with Oleksandr Kosovan, a famous Ukrainian tech entrepreneur and investor. He is best known as the founder and CEO of MacPaw, the software development company behind renowned products such as Clean My Mac, Clean My Phone, and Setup.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Great to see you, all of you here. Thank you for the pleasure being here.
Oleksandr created Clean My Mac while a student in college, and the app was designed to declutter, optimize, and protect Mac devices. And now MacPaw is a company of more than 500 people. Oleksandr also runs SMRK Venture Capital Fund, which provides venture investment for Ukrainian IT startups. Привіт, слава Україні.
Героям слава.
I think we wanted to start by saying thank you to American people.
Yeah, so again, thank you for the opportunity, and we cannot be thankful enough to our partners, allies, and our friends in the United States for helping Ukraine in this difficult situation. I think this is crucial for our survival, and again, we are extremely thankful for everyone who supported Ukrainians in these times of struggle. Thank you.
Well, to start with, I think if you could take us back to 2022 and tell us about the first weeks when the full-scale invasion began. What was it like? And take us through it from the point of view of leadership and cybersecurity perspective.
Yeah, so in 2022, there were a lot of rumors about the war that will begin. Nobody actually believed it, but nevertheless, we as a company prepared for it, and we had a lot of contingency plans prepared just in case of the war. But of course, the plans is one thing, and the reality is completely different thing, because you never know how you will behave. So on February 24th, around 4 a.m. in the morning, I woke up from the very loud blasts outside the window. I never heard that before, so I understood that something strange was happening. But in 5 minutes, I received a call from my wife. She was already with my kids abroad. I left them abroad and came back to Ukraine. And she told me that, have you seen this Putin speech? He's invaded Ukraine. And then I understood that the war already began. So I look out from my window. I've seen huge lines of cars already leaving Kiev. And then I started to think what to do. So mentally, I was prepared to stay. So I said goodbye to my house, to my property, and went to the office, because a lot of employees back then stayed in Ukraine, and we had some stuff prepared in the office, so we thought it would be like our fortress during these times, a shelter.
Generators.
Generators, food supplies, some other stuff, and basically for the first 2 months we lived in the office together with some other members of the team. So our goal was to do everything possible to support our military guys on the front lines, and there were so much things happening, just random groups created, random discussions, how we can supply this or that, how to get some tourniquets, how to get some crazy stuff like satellite images, etc. So it was scary but very dynamic and interesting moments.
I was working at Google at the time, and I had a lot of people reaching out to me about Google Maps and various other things that Russians try to exploit in the beginning of the invasion.
Yeah, because there were a lot of information that Russians used in order to attack Kiev from different sides, and they used this misinformation campaign where they were placing some markers in Google Maps, trying to disorient our military guys that some object will be attacked, and yeah, we contacted contacted Google in order to try to prevent this from happening and stop this kind of attacks. This is like only one example of many different tactics that Russians used to disorient Ukrainians and create chaos inside Ukraine.
According to CERT-UA statistics, every year Ukraine is hit by more than 2,000, and that's a conservative estimate, more than 2,000 security incidents, cybersecurity attacks. What can you tell me about how MacPaw is preventing cyber attacks, denial of service, phishing campaigns, nation-state malware, and how have your cybersecurity protocols changed since the war?
Well, at first it might seem like a very complex thing how to protect yourself from cybersecurity threats, but in reality you have just to follow a lot of protocols and frameworks that are already there for your help. And for example, for MacPaw, for us specifically, was very useful when we started the ISO compliance and SOC 2 compliance as well. So this provided us with a list of things we have to do as an organization in order to be better prepared for potential risks. Again, this is only one thing. But another aspect is people preparation, because usually in any cybersecurity attacks, the weakest chain block is human. And usually people make stupid mistakes that even can break the toughest security organization in the world. So we took approach of like methodically train our people for different types of attacks that can happen on our organization, as well as implemented a lot of tools like two-factor authorization, Okta as a provider, and a lot of other stuff to protect the endpoint devices from potential threats. So in combined, this helped us a lot, and with addition to that, we are a Mac-based company, and Apple ecosystem is in general
definitely more secure.
More secure. It's not perfect, of course, but it is much more secure than average PC on the market.
Could not agree more with you that usually the human is the weakest link in the chain, and training helps somewhat. Speaking of creating culture, how do you create strong cybersecurity culture in your companies, and what advice can we give the audience today?
Well, it starts from top to bottom. So when you start to implement some training programs, some methodological approaches, it has to be like a flow that you continuously repeat. So people do have to go through trainings. If they don't, you have to remind them to do so, and create the habit of being more aware of potential threats. Like especially if we talk about the security threats, usually how attackers can infiltrate the company is through either the malware, and you can get it by downloading some random software or piece of other stuff from the internet, or as well as phishing attacks, where an attacker is trying to get some of your credentials or other data information by pretending to be something else, some service that you regularly use. And there are like tactics how you can easily identify these phishing attempts and train people, okay, please check the main, where is it coming from? Are you waiting for this email, or it's just randomly appeared? Is this like the way we communicate, or this is like the like similar email that we never had in their organization? So there are many ways how you can train people in order to help them identify these attacks.
The typical ways is either to compromise your account and your machine without your knowledge, or to get you to give them access by misleading you through phishing, right?
Yeah, and if we talk about the recent large-scale attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure, like for example Kyivstar, this is one of the largest mobile operator in Ukraine. So it was like half a year ago. It has under massive, probably one of the biggest cyber attack
like Verizon or AT&T here
in the world. So almost 15 million customers of Kyivstar went down for a week.
Wow.
So the whole network of the mobile operator went down. And the attackers used phishing technique in order to infiltrate some of the machines of the employees of Kyivstar. But again, this was not just a random attack. It was like a well-planned operation that took almost 6 months to prepare. So once they infiltrated the network, they started to propagate, get access to some other stuff, learn the IT infrastructure, write some scripts to automate some stuff. And on the day zero, when this attack happened, so they killed everything. So all the infrastructure, all the backups, all the access systems to the network. So the whole operator went down, and people thought it would be probably even not possible to recover it. So there were a lot of cybersecurity experts were involved in this incident to help recover the network, and it took approximately like 1 week to get it back up and running. So again, this happened due to first of all targeted attack, and second, this was the reason that one of the employees was not aware enough and opened the phishing email.
Do you think anything could have been done differently to prevent this attack or prevent future ones like it?
Yeah, of course, there are many methods how you can isolate individual people from, even if their account gets compromised, they may not have access to do a lot of other stuff. So usually this is called like zero trust approach, when you don't trust anyone. So every service, every employee, every tool that you use has to be like identified and trusted like separately. So there are a lot of techniques that you can use to isolate even individual employees from getting access to all this information. MacPaw, we use, for example, MDM solution, Jamf.
Mobile device management.
Mobile device management, and this helped us to control the whole fleet of the computers in our organization. And we had cases like, for example, one of the employee was on the occupied territories and he lost access to the device. So we were able to remotely access and wipe out the devices. Also it helped us in other cases, like for example, when device was stolen, we were able to remotely identify its location, call the police, and find the device. But in general, it helps us to manage the whole fleet, like for example, installing updates, installing different security software, and checking if people are using some like unauthorized things that can breach our security.
So the key idea here, and I'll try to reinforce the point, is you can minimize the damage from these attacks. You can prevent them having lasting impact by detecting them early, segmenting your users into environments where most of them don't have access that could really cause damage, and kind of make the lateral spread of the attacker more difficult, slow it down so that you detect your first infected folks, and then you can cut them off from the network before the attackers get to the...
Yeah, so the more layers of security you have, the more time it will take the attackers to get to their goal. It doesn't mean it will not be possible, because even the strongest security companies are hacked from time to time. But still, like, it will take much more efforts, and sometimes it will be too expensive for attackers to attack like average organization. But again, if we are playing against the enemy state like Russia, they are investing like billions of dollars into these operations, in order to target our energy infrastructure, network operators, etc. So they are doing it very methodically and professionally.
If we think about the big picture, what do you think is the role of cyber in modern hybrid warfare? How have bad actors used disinformation campaigns and advanced threats against Ukraine and against the United States?
Well, cyber is another layer of war. It's not a hot war, but it may be. Yeah, it is already happening in many countries, like not only in Ukraine, like in Europe, in the United States. So countries like Russia, North Korea, they are actively exploiting this. And like one of the goals they have is to get access to very vulnerable information, like about I know, some contracts, people, some very sensitive stuff that they can use for other types of attacks. Like, for example, in Ukraine, we had another attack just recently when the whole registers with information about Ukrainian citizens, property, and many other stuff, again, they were hacked and completely wiped out. This was another type of attack that happened just like a few months ago. And it took about a month to recover. But what's other threats about it is, what information did they get from this? For example, the location of people that are very important, like where do they live, what property do they have, and again, they can use it already in a hot war to target some drone strikes or rocket strikes on our people. So there are like many layers of these threats, and beside the cybersecurity, we also have the informational warfare. It's not like hacking the systems, but it's hacking the brains. When Russians and propaganda, yeah, when they try to
fake accounts,
influence our minds and the perception of truth,
and ultimately influence the election results.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, speaking about the elections, we had a really interesting case in Romania. So maybe you heard about this elected president that won due to the TikTok influence, and he was like very pro-Russian. So we had the startup that we backed up called Osavul, and they were able to identify the informational campaign, the sources, how they influenced these elections, and they were able to use it as an evidence against this elected candidate.
And now they're going to have new elections in Romania without that candidate, right?
I hope so.
I hear about the partnerships between Ukraine and other countries and organizations like NATO in the areas of cybersecurity. What are some of the ways Ukrainians can inform the rest of the world, and what can other nations learn from Ukrainian resilience?
If you are in a war, there are like continuous cat and mouse game, and there are like new methods to attack other opponents and new methods to protect from this. And when you are in a hot war, this develops very rapidly. So we have like experience that we can share with other countries. How we use to protect from this type of war. Like specifically right now, there is like new realm of cybersecurity threat. I would say it's like AI, artificial intelligence. And the problem with that is that attacks may be very customized to individual users. So they tailor it to specifically you based on the information they might have about you. So it's becoming more difficult to identify, is it a real message or email, or is it like a fake one generated by AI? And the problem with that is that when attacks are happening, usually they have like a massive scale. So they usually target like millions of users and they have information about. But with an AI, they can tailor this million of users individually for each person. And the success rate of these attacks may rise. So I think in the new realm that we are living, we need to also look for other tools and solutions to prevent these types of attacks.
For us, of course, AI is not new. We've known it as machine learning, and we've used it in our products for many years. But for a lot of people, AI is related to these chat assistants that are so popular now with Perplexity and ChatGPT and Claude and others. And people are jumping on them, not being aware of the risks of AI. What is MacPaw doing in relation to AI, and what risks from AI do you see?
Well, we have our own, first of all, cybersecurity products based on large language models as well. And we are working on our smart AI assistant called NA that we received.
Eneida.
Yes, like Kotlяревsky's Eneida. Yeah, so we announced it, but we haven't publicly launched it yet. And I believe this will be like a really huge thing for us. We want to redefine how the software used by the end people. But nevertheless, if we talk about this security, I think that we can apply these technologies in order to educate people better on the risks, on the existing risks, and help them prevent some attacks and cybersecurity risks as well. So, and the great thing about the AI is that basically it can speak your language the way you understand it and you like it. So if you like a more technical user, you will get more information and details. If you are less technical users, it will just help you to do the right thing. And if you will follow it, it will help you.
It will be contextual. It will adapt to the user.
Yeah. And this is the great thing about the AI. It can be very, very well personalized.
Got it. So digging deeper into the technical details of defending from threats, what innovation have this wars kind of inspired Ukrainians to do to defend in the areas of malware sandboxing, next generation endpoint security? How we countering Russian threats differently from what was there before the war? And I can speak a little bit about sandboxing technology because one of my companies was working on that, competing with FireEye. About 10 years ago, I was working on a software version of a FireEye appliance to detect malware coming through the network through sandboxing. But I'm sure that's not the latest innovation now.
Well, if we talk about the innovation, usually this is a combination of all stuff that already were on the market and the reaction on some new threats that are happening. So I cannot specifically tell about like single innovation that we do or like as Ukrainians we do. But again, so when you continuously think about security and you try to improve your networks, your systems, you are building like an immune system against these threats, and it really helps. But like if we talk about like single innovation, it's hard to name one.
We're hearing news every day about possible peace agreement, ceasefire, kind of pause in the war in Ukraine, and I'm hopeful that if it comes, it will be a just and lasting peace backed by security guarantees. If you can imagine that post-war period, what will cybersecurity, how would it evolve in the post-war period? What are some of the steps that companies inside and outside Ukraine should take to fortify their cybersecurity?
Well, when we have, I hope, when we have the ceasefire with good guarantees of security, it definitely will not mean that the war will be over. It will be just on a different like layers.
Ceasefire might apply to the land and sea, but not to cyber.
Yeah, for sure. Not to cyber, not to the informational warfare, because Russia will definitely try to be involved in our elections and to try to affect it. They will definitely try to break us from the inside by spreading some misinformation and other stuff. And yeah, and so what's particularly dangerous about the informational security is when you have so much data about the citizens, about their connections, about their property and other stuff. So this is big data. You can specifically understand the sensitive groups you can target with different information. You can attack them not only in the cyberspace, but for example, try to play on their problems that people might have, like the language problem, the usual problem that you usually
divide people over the language, Russian versus Ukrainian.
Yeah, and they can target them with advertisement, with different informational campaigns, and try to try to break us from
destabilize the situation
from inside, yeah, and destabilize the situation. So I think that this will definitely be happening. And for example, how we can protect people from this risk is to identify these attempts as early as possible and try to be vocal and tell about them. Like, hey, this is the campaign Russians started. This is how it is spreading through this type of resources, and for this purpose, our Osavul startup is like the perfect example. So they use AI to scan different social networks, media, and other stuff, and try to identify the narratives that are spreading, what are their sources, what are their variations, and present it to our security teams, intelligence teams, so they can already react on this information. So this is like a very useful tool in the modern informational warfare.
Sounds great. For MacPaw, speaking about partnerships and collaboration, what organizations have you worked with from MacPaw during the war, and why those collaborations have been valuable?
Yeah, so we are like very, very grateful to our international partners, and particularly when we have some DDoS, denial of service attacks on our infrastructure. We worked with Cloudflare, for example, and they helped us to mitigate at least some of the risks. We were down for a few hours, but nevertheless, it didn't affect our business much. We also use products like CrowdStrike for endpoint protection, and it helps us to identify, for example, like malware spreads or some data leakage possible from any actors. So we had incidents like this, and we were able to block them in time to prevent any data leakage outside. So these are very useful tools so that any company can integrate. Well, this is of course beside the cloud providers that we use, like Google, Amazon, etc. Because in Ukraine we have not only the informational risks but also the physical risks of the complete destruction. Like just recently, our office was attacked by like 2 missiles. This is what happened to our office. So thankfully, nobody was injured because it happened early in the morning. But nevertheless, the building, the nice office was completely, well, it's not destroyed, but it was heavily damaged. So we had a really nice office like Google, but in Ukraine. And right now it looked like this already.
This is in Kiev.
Yeah, this is our Kiev office. And again, so we have a threat of the physical attack on the infrastructure. So for this case, we used our cloud providers to relocate all important business data and processes outside of Ukraine. And right now, as a company, we can go completely offline, but all our products and services continue to work, so we won't feel anything on our business. So we prepared for these situations because we understood that there is a high risk that, okay, the network can go down. Physically, our offices can be damaged. So some of our employees may not be accessible due to the, occupation of territories or something else. So we prepared for this, and we tried to automate our business the ways so we could operate without any involvement.
Yeah, most American people cannot even imagine what it's like and how much strength and resilience Ukrainians have to survive these attacks every day. And when I look at this, I almost worry that it's the risk of getting hit, getting hurt. Is it worth coming to the office at all? Why don't companies go fully remote?
Well, we do. Like if we talk about the load of the office, so there are like maybe 20% load. So people usually work from home and from other remote locations, but still people want to be connected, because when you're under continuous attacks, when you sit at home for a long period of time, people are getting crazy.
That's the mental well-being.
It definitely affects the mental well-being, and this is another tactics of Russians, how they can press on people. So for the last 9 months, every single night we have drone strikes over Kiev. Every night. So every single night people cannot sleep normally because they wake up from blasts, and in the long periods of time it has effect on the mental state of the people. So a lot of people have PTSR and PTSD in English. So people want to stay connected, and that's why even despite these risks, they go to the office because, well, they're happy to see each other.
When the air raid sirens go off, do people kind of take it as usual now and ignore them, or do most people still go to the shelters? Do you see any change in the attitudes for?
Well, you are getting tired of it, frankly. So when you have error alerts every day, sometimes even several times per day, you are getting tired of continuously running into the shelter. So you start looking at the threat source. Like if it's drones, okay, we have like a couple of like half an hour to go there. If it's an rocket strikes, so ballistic missiles, so maybe they should go to the office, and they do more frequently. So we try to, again, to use some of the information from the intelligence that we have in order to make the decision go or not to go. But again, it's recommended to go to the shelter because the risk is high, but again, you cannot do it just every single day, several times a day.
What are some of the different ways to support Ukraine right now? In strengthening cybersecurity, digital resilience, or in other ways?
Well, we are extremely grateful to all companies that are supporting us, especially with their products and services. So many companies are donating like their software licenses, for example, to help run some businesses and even the government operations. Like especially just recently, we received another gift from Atlassian. So they provided like almost a lot of licenses to our military operations. So they
Jira or other products?
Jira, Bitbucket, etc. And again, this helps to run the IT army in Ukraine in the modern way, because otherwise it would be too expensive to use these tools. So there are many ways how to support Ukrainians, and right now, especially with the US aid shutting down, there are a lot of programs that are closing right now that are like crucial for like democratic countries, for anti-corruption laws and protection. So there are like many programs that are starting. So I think it's important to support directly some of the organizations that you trust. And for example, in MacPaw, we also started our MacPaw Foundation, and we donated our own resources as well as the resources that we collect from international donors, our users. So over the last 2 years, we donated almost $12 million to different help needed on the battlefield, in our like medical supplies and other directions. A lot of technical stuff, because we supply the laptops, the network equipment where it is needed, because right now the war is mostly online, so the real-time access to the intelligence is crucial for decision making, and without like good network connection, without good equipment, it would be much less effective.
Yeah, the loss of USAID in particular really hurts, because there's so many charities, organizations in Ukraine were relying on USAID funding, and when Elon Musk's Doge has completely shattered it, these organizations, many could not continue. And our charity, Nova Ukraine, has set up a fund for bridge funding such organizations. I think until the end of March, they can apply for funding at Nova Ukraine bridge funding website. We allocated $500,000, which is not nearly enough for this. But dozens of organizations already applied for this in Ukraine.
Thank you.
Talk to me a little bit about this. What is this?
Yeah, by the way, this is one of our CSR projects. So we just recently released a book called Innovation in Isolation. And the idea behind this project was to show particularly why Ukrainians are so great in tech, why there are so many great engineers from Ukraine. And the reality is that we have like a really rich heritage born in Ukraine over the last 80 years. So most of the Soviet IT or cybernetics, as it was called in the USSR, was created near Kiev, Kharkov, Lviv. So all the Soviet large-scale machines was produced by Ukrainians in Ukraine. And people do not know that because, well, usually it was considered like as USSR or even Russian. And Russia trying to steal this heritage, this part of the history from us. And we decided to create like a book showing the real history behind Ukrainian tech innovations. And right now we officially sell it on Amazon in the US, and all the proceedings from the book goes to our MacPaw Charity Foundation.
And they can find this book on Amazon.
Yeah, so this is a way you can support us in this difficult time. So thank you, and this is very interesting to read.
All right. One last question I wanted to ask you before we go to the audience, and that's the biggest lessons you've learned as a leader. What can you share with other leaders? How can organizations balance security by design, business continuity planning, agile threat response, and other leadership lessons in general? What do you want to share with other folks who are trying to build a successful company?
Well, in terms of crisis like the war, people should have something to rely on, and organizations in this sense should be like a very something people can rely on, like a pillar they can trust and be supported. So from the early days, we started a lot of support programs for people who had to relocate, who lose their homes, who didn't know what to do. And for us particularly, what was really helpful is this business contingency plans that we prepared in advance. Like for example, with the office strike, when it happened, we already had a plan what to do, like what to check, what organizations to contact, and all the plan was already written, and it was specifically helpful because people panicked and they were scared, they didn't know what to do, where to go, and sometimes were making like mistakes. And it's crucial to have this plan in advance where you can just follow the points from A to C.
Prepare for the worst and just execute your plans.
Yeah, even if sometimes you cannot predict the future, it is still helpful because again, this helps people in crisis situations to follow something that is already understood and thought through like days before. So this is particularly crucial. In terms of cybersecurity, again, this is continuous cat and mouse game, but the best thing you can do as an organization is invest in the education of people. Because when people know what threats there are, there is a demand for protection, for tools and better security practices that can prevent some attacks or leaking of some information.
Thank you, Oleksandr. I want to open it up for the audience to ask any questions at this point.
Oleksandr, thank you for your insights. And you have so much experience that many other companies will never be able to have, fortunately. To frame it more practical, what kind of lessons other companies who face geopolitical risks can take from your experience? Or how do you determine what level of cybersecurity investments is too much or is enough in practical standing of business operations?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I believe like good security is when it exists but you don't notice it, because when it's becoming too brutal and annoying for people, and people just try to find workarounds around security rules, and they try to break it, and the whole concept of security breaks. So the good security is when it is simple enough for average people to understand and not to intrude you. And for us, like for me personally, like the user experience, the people experience is very important. So you should take this under consideration when you make decisions like which tools to use or what security policies to apply in your organization. So it has to be balanced in order to work. It cannot be too strict, because otherwise, like even your business processes can be damaged and due to the too high security requirements.
I'll chime in with my thoughts on this as well to Vadim's question. On the level of necessary investment in cybersecurity for most companies, I think it varies, but what's important is that you have to have a dedicated security leader, CISO, CSO in every company, and that role should report to CEO or to the board, and the board should be discussing security at every board meeting. Unfortunately, what I've observed is that a lot of companies start investing in cybersecurity after something breaks, after they're breached, or after they have a reason to. But before that, they think they can get away by not investing much. So it would be better if they learn from the failures of others and prevent problems rather than responding to them after the case.
Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for both of you for what you are doing for Ukraine. My question is about this digital warfare. Well, we're living in a nightmare right now. I mean, we have a president here that seems to, follow orders from Moscow. And we have big tech companies that seem to follow what they want. They're not resisting, they're working with them. So I'm just wondering, if you look at the digital warfare that's going on right now, and you also work with some of the big tech companies because you have to, and you work with Starlink because it's there, is there not a really big risk of keep working with those companies, and maybe you should go back to this independent Ukrainian and try to avoid any contact with those companies, because they seem to be going along with Trump, along with Putin right now, right? It's risky business.
Could you rephrase your questions and say it a little bit louder? Which companies should go back to where?
Well, the fact that you have to, working for and with Ukraine, you have to also work, as you mentioned, with Amazon and Google and all the big platforms. And for the information sharing, you have to work with Starlink. Starlink being owned by Musk, being friends with Trump, being friends with Putin. It seems to be a very risky time when big tech companies are trying to accommodate not necessarily your allies, but your enemies. I'm just wondering what you could do, I don't know, but it seems to be a very risky time to be sharing a lot of information with those big tech companies.
Well, yeah, I agree that this could be a risk, but what you can do is try to diversify your providers in case of something goes wrong, and have like backups or plan B, what you will do in order to mitigate some of the risks. But again, especially, so if you look at the political situation right now, yeah, there is a risk that for some reason, I don't know, Trump decides to sanction Ukraine and will block access to this cloud providers. And this will be a huge risk for Ukraine. And yeah, so in order to prevent this risk, you have to consider, okay, what are other options that you have, how you can diversify the providers.
And in general, I see this trend of most countries now being more aware of geopolitical risks and preferring that their citizens use providers in their own countries, using domestic cloud providers, using domestic software, because it's a little bit less risky that it can be compromised by a foreign attacker, or that the policy of another country can affect your citizens.
Well, unfortunately, it is not always possible, especially when you use the best tools out there and you want to have like a good usability and the best tools. You have to trust some of your data and security to other companies. But if you want to localize everything, it will be, sometimes it's much more expensive and not always possible.
Hello, Catherine Valinga here. So, first of all, I just really want to acknowledge the two of you. You're very humble, extraordinary men that have done so much for the world. And so I'd like to direct this question to both of you. You know, we know your titles, CEO of MacPaw, and, you know, Nick's incredible titles, everything you've been part of throughout your years in Silicon Valley and in the tech world. But what we're seeing is that Ukrainians are doing much more than just their roles. You know, you're running your businesses, you're investing in others, you're helping the army, you're helping Ukrainian charities, humanitarian efforts. So, and what we've really seen in Ukraine is this incredible initiative that it's almost like people aren't telling people what to do. It's the ultimate self-organizing system where it's like people are unleashed, take personal responsibility, make a difference, and go to where their skills are needed most. I'd love for you to tell us more about your personal experiences with that and kind of give us a sense of everything you're working on, each of you.
Thank you. Well, what I can tell, we definitely cannot rely on our government in order to help secure our country and our future. And particularly, we do things what we do because we believe in Ukrainian people. We believe that if you want to change something, you have to do it on your own or together with somebody else. Because again, so you are the one that can change the future of our country. And on the first days of war, we understood that one of the biggest armies in the world would attack Ukraine, and we had no chances. But nevertheless, we stood up and we decided not to wait till our government tell us something or will protect us. We decided to do something, and many men stood up to the gun. They went to the service. Many started to be volunteers and to do everything possible while our government started to do something. And there are many projects that started from this self-organization initiatives, and they're one of the best right now in the world. For example, the military intelligence service system that is used right now, Delta, it was created by one of the volunteering organizations. It's not the government one, and this is right now one of the systems that provides the real-time intelligence on the battlefield and helps us to be so much effective against the much stronger enemy. So, and this empowers me personally because this is what I personally fight for these people, for this Ukraine, and I hope that again we can provide so much more to the world besides our natural resources. There is so many things are happening in Ukraine that can be a great experience to other countries.
Thank you so much for your question. On my side, I'm particularly focused on helping Americans give money and give support to Ukraine and giving them a trusted way to do that. Most Americans support Ukraine. Most Americans know that Vladimir Putin is a bad guy and that Russia started the war. That's what the polls show. And when they're looking for ways to help Ukraine, we provide that top-rated charity navigator organization that can provide humanitarian aid. So that's been a big focus for me. And another thing I'm focused on is empowering entrepreneurs and help build more Ukrainian unicorn startups, billion-dollar startups out of Ukraine. We already have several. I hope we will have many more. And I think that's really important for us to create those jobs and create the organizations that will give the rise to the next generation of successful software executives like Oleksandr.
Basically, this is the kind of freedom we are fighting for. So we had an opportunity to build our own future, our own companies, and to make many successful unicorns from Ukraine.
So I don't see any more questions. but will be available after the session. I think that's all the time we have. I want to thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
My name is Bilogorsky. We're speaking with Oleksandr Kosovan of MacPaw. Please scan the QR code to learn more about MacPaw and its initiatives. And continue standing with Ukraine. It's really important. Your continued support means a lot to both of us and to all Ukrainians everywhere. Slava Ukraini!